Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. I'm back with another boiler ball recap as the Minnesota Golden Gophers came into town to try to play spoiler against Purdue. Purdue's going to face every team's A game, and they sure did in this one. But without further ado, let's run it. So Purdue ends up coming out on top of this one, 84-76. The Boilermakers came into this game looking to defend Mackey as usual and keep the momentum rolling throughout the month of February, avoiding any major slumps or bad outings like they've had in February and March last year. Minnesota came in with something to prove, and at a 500 record in the Big Ten, they wanted to shake things up, and they sure gave Purdue a battle. Going into some of the top performers, at the top, once again, the big man, Zach Edey, with 24 points on 8 of 18 shooting, 8 for 14 from the free throw line, 15 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, but 4 turnovers. So that's a little bit of a blemish on his game there. Struggled a little bit shooting. We'll talk about some of that later. Secondly, you've got Braden Smith. He ended up with 16 points on 5 of 7 shooting. He was 2 for 2 from 3, 4 for 4 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, and 4 steals. So a very near triple-double. We're just waiting on the day that it finally happens. And ended up with 4 steals as well. So that was massive performance on his part. For Minnesota, you start off with Dawson Garcia, who has been, if you follow, Big Ten college basketball or have paid attention to the Gophers for the last couple of years, he's been a common name. He's really built himself into a great overall player. In this game, he had 24 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 3 of 5 from the three-point line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal. And the other guy, you've got Mike Mitchell Jr. With 14 points on 4 of 13 shooting, so not a very efficient game, but those four shots were 4 threes, as he shot 4 for 8 from the three-point line with 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal as well. Some honorable mentions for each team. It feels like a very popular honorable mention for Purdue is Mason Gillis. He is an elite guy off the bench, and he showed his worth in this one, scoring 14 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 4 for 8 from the three-point line, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. So he's been a super great part of Purdue's team, and a lot of people want him to start, but you can see his worth off the bench and see the type of sixth man that he's able to be for them throughout this year. And for Minnesota, you've got Cam Christie, younger brother of Max Christie, who was on Michigan State last year, now in the NBA. He ended up with 13 points on 5 of 11 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. So he's another one. He provided some great minutes. And as you can see, for some of these top guys for Minnesota, boy, did they shoot the 3-ball well. I don't know about you, but I was not expecting this game to be this much of a battle. Purdue hit first with a couple of quick baskets from Edey, but the rest of the first half was all Minnesota. They shot the lights out, especially in the first half. That was good enough to put them up 8 at halftime, which was Purdue's second biggest halftime deficit of the season, just behind the Nebraska game where the Cornhuskers jumped out to an 11-point lead by halftime and never let up. But that type of shooting wouldn't last for the Golden Gophers, unlike in the Nebraska game, especially not with the paint crew and all of Mackey behind Purdue. After a quick bucket to start the second half for Minnesota, Purdue jumped out to a lightning-fast 8-0 run over the span of a minute and a half to cut the lead to 2. And from that point on, Purdue just wore down Minnesota. After shooting red hot in the first half and making 9 threes, Minnesota only made 3 in the second half, and their percentage dropped to 48% from the nearly 60% it was in the first half. And Purdue started knocking down their shots. Their 3-ball woke up in the second half, and Purdue found more ways to get Edey open and avoid some of the double teams and digs that he was having trouble with in the first half. Edey still ended up with 24 and 15, but it was a struggle, missing some shots, free throws, and struggling to look comfortable out there at times. Some of that was from how he had to battle with the way that Minnesota was guarding him. They ended up calling a very obvious hook and hold in the second half, but Edey and Purdue as a whole struggled to capitalize from the free throw line. Edey going 8 for 14, and Purdue as a whole leaving 13 points at the free throw line, going 19 for 32. They need to figure out how to knock down more of their free throws, especially just being more consistent if they're going to find a way to win more difficult games down the road, especially in March. That brings me to the officiating. And boy, do I hate talking about officiating, but these refs were horrible. And I don't just mean for Purdue. They made atrocious calls on both sides. Cheap touch fouls that made no sense, a bunch of shooting fouls with very little contact, missed deflections and sending the ball the other way, and a surprisingly quick technical against Minnesota's coach, Ben Johnson. You name it, this game had it. It was all over the place, and it was very frustrating to watch. Now, as much as a lot of the stuff that I noticed went against Purdue, there were quite a few calls that went against Minnesota as well, that I just had to end up shaking my head at. As a Purdue fan, I'll take it, but as a basketball fan, it's just unfortunate and quite frankly annoying when Big Ten refs continue to be so subpar in so many of these games. But heading into some key points for each team. For Purdue, it comes down to defending rotations. Purdue's been a great defensive team for the large majority of this year, but the thing that Minnesota exploited well in this game was attacking the pick and roll with Mike Mitchell Jr. and forcing Purdue to step up and help. But they did a great job of finding the open man. So many of those first half threes that fell for the Golden Gophers were good shots, yes, but they were more open than they should have been. Purdue needs to get better at handling their rotations. They can't just help and expect teams to miss open threes like Indiana did in both of their matchups. Good shooting teams won't do that, and despite their record, Minnesota is a good three-point shooting team. They're shooting just over 35% from three on the year. For the love of all things holy, free throws. I mentioned this earlier, but Purdue cannot leave this many points at the free throw line against better teams. They're obviously an elite team at getting to the free throw line, but as the season's gone on, they've shot the ball worse and worse from the line, dropping their percentage from around 75% to just below 71%. I don't know exactly what's happened, but bad free throw shooting nights are becoming much more frequent for the Boilers, so they clearly have something to figure out. On the other side, for Minnesota, it's wear and tear. They had a great game plan going into this game, and they executed nearly perfect in the first half. But in the second half, they just wore down and stopped hitting so many of their tough shots that they were knocking down in the first. Good teams find a way around that. Purdue didn't see many of their shots fall like they're used to for much of the first half, but they stayed the course and found ways to get their guys going. Minnesota needs to find sustainable forms of offense to go to when their shots aren't falling, especially the three ball. And secondly, help yourselves out. I'm a big believer in momentum in any given game, and Minnesota absolutely had the momentum for all of the first half and even some of the second half. But they shot themselves in the foot, starting with a technical foul on their head coach, Ben Johnson. He thought a foul should have been called when Pharrell Payne tried to catch a lob and dunk the ball while jumping over and on top of Edey. But Edey just sort of stood there and no foul was called. And it didn't take much for the ref to call the tech on Johnson as he was saying things to him as he was running down the floor. So I don't know what he said. To me, it had to be something pretty egregious from the call to tech that fast, but that's kind of just how the game went with these refs. It was a little confusing. But that sent Fletcher Lawyer to the line for 2 shots with Minnesota up 8 at the time. Lawyer hits one of the 2. Purdue ends up with an offensive rebound on their next possession. TKR gets a bucket, a stop by Purdue, and a 3 from Braden Smith. And all of a sudden, in less than a minute, it's a 2-point game. There's no saying that Purdue wouldn't have made that run without the technical anyway, but it certainly gave the Mackey crowd something to get behind and riled everyone up to make that run possible. So it's crucial to avoid those types of mistakes that can flip the game on its head, especially against a team as good as Purdue at home. But this type of scare might have been good for Purdue. It's not the type of game you want to watch as a Purdue fan, but it is the outcome you want to see. Every game is a chance to learn more about yourself as a team, and Purdue has had a couple of these challenges throughout the year that they've been able to overcome and power through in the second half, where previous years, these would have ended up as losses. So for me, I'll take it. Purdue will look to rebound with a strong performance at Ohio State this Sunday in the Buckeyes' first game following Chris Holtmann's firing as head coach. So they'll be out to prove that they are more than their 2-9 record in their last 11 games. And Minnesota, on the other hand, gets Rutgers coming to Minneapolis on Sunday, coming off Rutgers' gritty win against Northwestern on Thursday, which extended their winning streak to 4 games. So expect Rutgers to bring their A game, and Minnesota will have to find a way around that stifling defense. But that's all I've got for today. We're diving deeper into February, and that means one step closer to March. Keep an eye out for more Boom Buster Believable as I make my way through as much of the Big Ten as I can before the conference tournament starts. But until then, like and subscribe for more college basketball content. And until next time, I'm out.